So we switched it up a little bit on you today. The Big Suey came out before the local hour did. The Big Suey is something that is a good litmus test today for whether or not you get the show. Many of you think you get the show. Many of you do not get the show. So you're allowed to not find it funny or interesting or symbolic or much of anything. But for us, we're doing that for us. And if you think it's interesting, we're grateful. And if you don't, you could go ahead and just bleep right off.
I mean, that escalated, Dan.
Stugotz is not here yet. He is coming in a second. We've got a whole boatload of things to talk about regarding him because he's already arriving late. He's already choosing the lazy path. He doesn't seem to see what's happening around us, so he's just going to keep doubling down on lazy and later. And now he's doing, well, I've got calls with lacrosse. And he told me that was going to end Tuesday, but it didn't end Tuesday. And I don't believe that they're calls with lacrosse. I think he's hiding behind his daughter and love of daughter to get away with crap as usual. And so we've got to keep lighting a fire on him just so that you guys know, okay? ESPN hasn't actually given us the time to do the Big Suey or the local hour. We're doing this stuff because we want to continue to give you what you're used to, and you complain anyway. But we're trying to. Nobody asked us at ESPN to do it. And in fact, they made it so difficult with my schedule that they're putting obstacles in my way of being able to do this. But I get in here. And Stugotz gets in here with varying degrees of consistency, and this is the only thing he has to do. And furthermore, Mike, I don't believe he's watching any of these playoff games. His every take is some version of it's not the same, and he doesn't have anything else. I think he's faking it. But Chris, what do you think here? Because he's up to no good. He might be here at some point, but he might not be.
I think he's just established in his own mind a valid excuse. So he's like, what is the most time I can get out of this one thing? He realizes family, very important. This is a big moment for his daughter. How many times can I be late off of this one excuse? And he's gonna push that until we call him out on it. He's gonna keep going.
Yeah, during the pandemic, you know that cliche, if I had a dime that this person said this, they'd be a millionaire. It's obviously an exaggeration. If I had a dime, Stugotz used this lacrosse thing as an excuse and said that it was ending very soon and this would be the last time I'd have to deal with it, I'd legitimately have like $16.
He is legitimately despicable. That is not an act. We will tell him to his face when he gets here because the things that he's doing behind the scene, I'm pretty sure he's going to bring us all down with an NCAA scandal because of trying to get a scholarship. Now, his daughter is excellent. That's no joke.
All-American.
She is excellent at lacrosse, and this is no indictment of her, but lacrosse scholarships are something that usually aren't 100%. You could get 60%, 70%. 50%, but I've heard some of the things that he's doing, and it feels like I'm working with Felicity Huffman.
Dude, he is like leveraging relationships he's made within this industry. I'm not going to implicate anybody because this is all hearsay and eavesdropping, right? These are just conversations I'm picking up as
this
like
needs to be said.
Hall.
This needs to be said publicly, okay? Me and Mike are just sort of hearing whispered things from a distance. We cannot corroborate, we cannot verify whether actual illegal acts that will get him jailed or sink the show in scandal are actually happening. But given his body of work and given the amount of whispering that he's doing when he's around here, I believe that there's something he's up to that is shady on top of shady.
Well, you mentioned Felicity Huffman, and for 2 straight days, I thought he was just talking about Lori Loughlin's case with a friend, and now I've realized he's just using it as a template.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start marking the little subtle colleges that he references, and I'm going to get a tally going, and we're going to see if his daughter ends up going to the school that he happens to mention casually throughout shows.
Chris, the Pac-12, considering the high-profile case that's on your, morning television every day, is a little hot right now. Perhaps let's not replicate that with the Pac-12 at the very least.
Is that why he's talking? Is that why he's talking to so much?
I mean, Dan. Now he's implicated. Like, congratulations.
As
if the last few months haven't been difficult enough on that person. Now he's getting subpoenaed thanks to you.
We are not joking, okay? I want that stated for the record. None of us here trust Stugotz in any way. Chris, do you believe that he's watching these playoff games? Because I believe he's just scrolling the internet in the morning. There have been too many holes in his game, even by his standards, even by his ridiculous trying to cover everything in schmutz and fraud standard. He doesn't seem to know much of anything. Do you think there's something that we could do here where we test? We test. Chris, can you do this for me today? Okay, there's no Billy today. Mike's fighting with his cable company, and Stugotz is late. So we got a lot of stuff going on, and we're shorthanded. But can you occasionally just ask him a question once he does arrive, Chris, to see if he's got the answer to anything that happened yesterday? Anything at all? Because I believe he's just skimming this stuff and that he doesn't have any information. And furthermore, he told me this yesterday. This is a true thing that he actually said during one of the breaks, because I fear for Rachel, his daughter, because, again, she is excellent at lacrosse, but he is absolutely living vicariously through her with the son that he does not have. Like, he's in the power mode. He wants to get up for calls, and he's talking to coaches, and he is doing all this stuff. And yesterday, you know what he says to me? I'm trying to get her into Northwestern, just because bleep Wilbon. I want my daughter at the school that Wilbon is so interested in showing off its education credentials. I want my daughter in there.
While he leverages his relationship with Mike Greenberg. I mean, he's the worst. He would be the parent. If I could cast a meddling parent that is up to no good, it would be Stugotz.
But he doesn't give off going to bed early to me. So in this scenario, we have him staying up late because he just seems like a night owl that's like up way past his wife. So I don't know, but I'm with you that I still think he might actually be up, but not watching these games.
But here's what happened, okay? He's up, at least in part, because he's just taking all these lacrosse calls. It's not that he's watching games. It's that the recruiting period was at midnight and coaches were, there was like, they did the whole thing with her where they're calling at 12:01 to show you how interested they are. And so he could be paying attention, but I just think that he's so lazy that he's not paying attention.
Yeah, I think the games, if they're on, they're just in the background while he's just hustling some of the nation's most well-known lacrosse coaches, because I think he's an Islanders fan, and I think he's watching that great series, but he doesn't know any of the details because all he just tells Roy and I is just something about Barry Trotz, and then he mutters, and it pitters out.
Okay, so what is this going to become, okay, over the next few years? Because, Mike, every day he comes in here and he complains about how tired he is, and he's not actually doing that much. Like, he's not. We have to be in our phones all the time. We have to be on top of things to a degree that is not reasonable. Like, it's bothersome to me that we can never sort of disconnect because we have to know the things that are going on in sports because this daily diarrhea machine will not stop for anybody.
Yeah, TV has thrown a couple of curveballs. I wasn't really prepared for like the inundation of that, but thank God I took that month off because you would have to peel me up off the floor. This is a lot.
Well, but I understand what's happening with you, okay? And I actually understand what's happening with the production crew because I believe everybody's working harder than they ever have under the circumstances. But have you guys realized that perhaps we have to work harder than we ever have because Stugotz isn't?
Yeah, I noticed that for the 2 weeks of self-quarantine because he decided to go to Maryland for a lacrosse tournament that inexplicably happened, and he tried to paint himself as this hero father that found out about the consequences after the fact when it was just a straight lie.
Well, how do we discuss this? Because we want so much of what is happening in the local hour and Big Suey and the post-game show to be a whispered secret. How do we keep this a whispered secret from Stugotz without?
He doesn't listen to what we put out.
Listen.
No. I understand that he's not going to listen to this. What I'm saying is, what can we do in the way of an intervention on air that he won't see coming because he's not listening to this? Like, what kind of content can we make around the fact that Stugotz, like, just to see if we could find the places where he's being fraudulent in a way that he can't sausage finger and pivot his way out of.
Dan, I legitimately care about him, and hearing some of these details, I pulled him aside and I was like, that's the Aunt Becky thing that you're doing. And he's like, no. I'm like, no, what you're doing is the Aunt Becky thing. I look at him dead in his eyes, and I don't think it registers, Dan.
It really would be funny if we got everybody that he would consider a friend in this industry, which would be a huge Zoom. but just bring everybody in and everybody has a real serious tone. And we have an on-air intervention with Stugotz for his lying.
Wow, that would be funny. How do we do this? How can we do this?
He's gonna become a porcupine. You're backing Stugotz into a corner. There's sometimes that he can go with it, but if you have an actual intervention that calls into question his dishonesty, it's probably not going to go as well as we're all intending.
He's so right about this, Chris. He is so right about this, that if we had an intervention for Stugotz's lying, eventually he would start to turn red. He would definitely start rubbing both of his upper arms, as he does as a pacifying gesture whenever he's been caught in a lie. And after pivoting and trying to talk his way out of it, and just an unprecedented number of fake laughs, he will then become prickly and porcupiney, and we will have a problem on our hands where we have, instead of something being funny, you know what's going to happen? I'll be the bleep hole for backing the porcupine into a corner for lying.
Yep, because you always lose those. And then all of a sudden, something that he's held on to, some argument in the waxy parking lot, comes to light after 12 plus years. I'm telling you, man, that's an L if we do that.
I don't know what we're going to do about Stugotz going forward, though. People do not want this show to die, Mike, okay? People don't want this show to die, and we are doing everything we can with our vibrancy to keep it alive.
Including trying to keep him out of, like, NCAA infractions, because that might bring us down, too. I do think he knows what's going on, because on his drive in, he listens to the morning show. So I think he heard Zubin talk about OG Anunoby.
I understand that is where his knowledge comes from, but I'm also referencing the 14 days he wasn't making a drive in.
Oh, yeah, and he was complaining about how tired he was. And while he was an absolute hero, a content factory during the height of the pandemic, putting out 3 Supodities a week sometimes, really, I mean, he was the linchpin of the Batard and Friends podcast network. We mitigated a lot of losses when podcast listenership went down, but I don't know if you guys have noticed, Supodity output getting later and later. We're back to 1 a week, and it might show up Friday morning. Who knows? Who cares? It might not show up at all. But hey, I was good for like a 6-week stretch.
Hold on a second, though. You say that it's going a little bit in the direction of trending towards sewage. I'm pretty sure that he was on Pablo's ESPN Daily podcast, and then he repurposed that interview and just made it a stupidity and called it the height of laziness.
Confirmed.
Roy, what are you laughing at?
Roy, he's using you. He's repurposing. He's already in reruns. Now, granted, it's about social commentary, but he just like, hey, Roy, do this week's Supodity.
Yeah, we did his work for him this week. Definitely did that. But none of this is surprising. You know, like I'm kind of used to it at this point.
Well, people think that we're joking. None of this is exaggerated. We'll exaggerate anything, but the Stugot stuff is not an exaggeration. I've told you the story before that originally the PTI crew, after making PTI, instead of making Highly Questionable, wanted to turn our radio show into a full-fledged television show. And the thing that the 2 producers who came down and were ready to show run noticed during the breaks is they came to me and they said, oh my God, the Stugotz thing's not a character. Like he's really that greasy, awful thing. And then we can't air any of this. This is not something that
What is this local hour? The crew talk shit behind Stugotz's back?
Yes, this is what it is. We're going to get to Heat basketball in a second. But Roy, I heard him push you back on something that he was supposed to do with you 2 times this week at 2:00 in the afternoon. Has he done it yet?
Yeah, that was it. That was this week's Stupidity. It took us 2 months to do, by the way.
So he wanted that sequel a lot sooner, because it did seem like it was like 6, 7, or 8 weeks in between, like the last one that you guys did.
Yeah, well, timing didn't work, and most of it was, because of Stugotz. But,
Okay.
Stugotz.
All right. So before we go down the path of doing a local hour here that has some Miami Heat sports in it at an exciting time, Mike Ryan, can you step up to the line, get as close to the line as you can, and tell one of your famous Stugotz memory stories where he has done something truly terrible, but not so bad that it is not something that you can say on the air. Like just something that's up against the line, because of course we're used to it. When Roy says, like Roy's got a smile on his face, and we all love him. We all love Stugotz, but we hate him.
Yeah.
And Roy's got a big smile on his face. And he's saying, yeah, that's just Stugotz. I have to wait 2 months to do something with him, and he will keep postponing and postponing and postponing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'll give all the details of not this most recent incident, but one that happened in July, where I went remote for a couple of days, and Stugotz, there's a documentation that backs this up. We have the receipts. I went over to Stugotz's house, and he told me, hey, I might need some time off, but there's no real certainty because these lacrosse tournaments may or may not be happening. Okay, keep me posted. Doesn't keep me posted. I write him a couple of times, and then Liam sends an email. Liam, our manager over at Bristol, who helps with our scheduling, he says, okay, Stugotz, are there any upcoming lacrosse things? No. Flatly, no. Those days that I told you to earmark, don't worry about it, not happening. So I'm from Jacksonville, anticipating a show with Dane and Stugotz in the studio. Stugotz pops up on a Zoom after calling me, hey, how do I get in the Zoom? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's in Bradenton, Florida. He's in Bradenton, Florida when he
you
told us.
You were expecting him here.
We were all expecting him here. He was in Bradenton, Florida, and none of his equipment worked. And by the way, he called me and begged me to let him out of the show an hour early. When he said flatly this was not happening, I cannot overstate how unprofessional this is. We expected Stugotz in studio, and he was in Bradenton, and it caught everyone by surprise.
I want to explain to the audience right now that I asked Mike to just go through in his head about a decade and a half of Stugotz stories, and he just took the last two latest, and I don't blame him. There are so many that you can't keep track of this library. Like, he just took one of the stories from last month because this is what he does.
He'll go where he can get the yes. He knows that he's not getting many yeses from me. So he'll just feed me some lies.
Oh, the number of times that he's gone around your back to me trying to get the yes.
Yeah, to you directly, trying to schedule back in like the Mike and Mike days, trying to schedule trips to Mike and Mike where he could fill in, use it as an excuse. Hey, the Mike and Mike people asked me, when he is begging for Mike and Mike so he can expense an entire trip to the Northeast. I mean, he's an absolute scoundrel.
He sent me his schedule, and now I just realized why. He sent me his schedule because you and Liam had already told him no. And this is what he does. He gets no, 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 and then says when he comes to someone like me, hey, Mike and Liam are good with this. Are you, Dan? Are you all right with this?
It's a major red flag. You know me. I am never cool with it. If Stugotz is asking for something, chances are, just have that be your default position, that I'm not cool with it.
Well, explain to me, though, why it is, how it is that we continue to love somebody who is so clearly evil.
I've been smiling the whole time Mike is talking. What is he? He's created this character. Like, I love him. I like him more now after the story you just told.
Well, I always tell people he lies at every turn, but in many respects, it's the most honest relationship that I have because I know everything he says is a lie.
Yeah.
So in that, he's actually speaking in ultimate truth.
Yes.
Right.
If you can just decipher. It's not like he's not a savant. We
all have that with him now. Like that golf show that we talked about yesterday, that is not, like, I did not exaggerate that. I've had so many phone calls with Stugotz. That show was green lighted as far as I was concerned. Like, Stugotz was like, we are doing this. I need the full rundown, like what it would look like. And I did that and I sent it to him. He's like, I got a meeting tomorrow. It's going to be big. We got this. This is great. And then it just classic Stugotz. Time passes. And then he'll talk to you like 2 months after that. Like, by the way, Chris, I haven't heard it. I mean, I'm going to send an email today about that. That's
Chris,
I'm on that.
This is a tweet that we got yesterday. Someone saying this great idea, and Stugotz's past is littered with failed partnerships where he was asking someone else to do 90% of the work, and he has to do 10, and he fails to do the 10. Like, his entire past is littered with that. But we got a tweet saying about the golf show that you and Stugotz were putting together, that the way that was going to go is 7 shows. It's an 8-episode series, 7 shows where you are trying to cajole famous people in order to do television, a golf show with Stugotz, which, by the way, is already being done. It's this is not that novel an idea. Isn't this what's the golf pro, the David
Faraday.
Faraday does that show,
No,
right?
he doesn't play.
He doesn't actually play. When I heard him talk about the idea, I'm like,
I've watched Faraday
good.
a bunch. It's just a sit down interview, but yes, I mean it's the same type of show. Yeah.
He doesn't. God bless his heart. There's going to be a lot of work that goes into interviewing someone. I would love to watch that. I think Stugotz would be great as like a co-host to that show.
No, but what the tweeter said was specifically it's going to be Chris negotiating for 7 shows with the celebrities, and then on the 8th show, Stugotz not showing up.
Right. Oh, but like Stugotz wanted this to be a show where they're actually playing the round. So like there's camera shots of the golf shots. And I'm like, Stugotz, you realize how hard that is to make look? He's like, no, man, you get 2 camera angles, one behind the golfer, one on the green, you're good. I'm like, Stugotz, I don't think you really know how to like track a golf ball in the air on a TV show.
Has anyone in the history of working gotten more for knowing less? Like, because he doesn't know how camera shots work, because why would he? He just expects ESPN to fly down 400 cameras and film him for a golf show because, you can tell at the moment how much ESPN respects us.
There was a point when we were just asking Danny, our TV guy, how much would it cost to run a TV? And we were getting numbers from Danny. Like he was the one giving us like what this might cost.
Mike, yes or no?
I feel like we're revealing too much. I feel like I've said too much.
We have all said
Are we on the air? Are we on the air?
Well, here we've all said too much, but it's his fault. Like, I believe that if he's let off in handcuffs, this will be used as put in front of a jury. Everything that's happened here. Look, your friends knew that you were doing this. They heard you whispering in the hallways. We've absolutely said too much, but you know how he can solve that? Go ahead and be here on time. Quit being a bleep hole.
Over 2.3 million people are in jail and prison today. Black Americans make up 40% of those incarcerated, despite making up only 13% of U.S. residents. This is not an accident. It's a consequence of decades of bad policy decisions. As we address systemic racism, we must address the crisis of mass incarceration. Joe Biden promised an ACLU volunteer that, if elected, he'd reduce incarceration levels by 50%. We need him to follow through on that promise. A commitment now to release anyone who has served half of a drug sentence would send a signal that he is serious. The ACLU believes our criminal legal system is broken, racist, and unjust. Our next president must fix that and can start by releasing those hurt by the misguided war on drugs. Paid for by the American Civil Liberties Union, Inc., rightsforall.org.
And now another edition of Obvious News from Geico.
Obvious News!
A study says that soft talkers do not make great radio personalities. We asked local librarian Steve Sage about this, and here's what he said.
Honestly, I don't buy it. I think I make very captivating radio.
Also in Obvious News, Geico makes it easy to save money and easy to manage your policy with the Geico app. So switching is a really smart decision. How does Steve feel about this?
I love the Geico app. I use it all the time.
That's Obvious News from Geico.
Obvious News!
We'll get to Heat Talk in just a second, but this is the most obvious Stugotz lie ever. He's still not here. So he texts me this at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, and all the schools that I've been hearing about, I guess an East Coast team must have jumped in the fray. I'm led to believe that he is having calls with West Coast schools at like 6:30 a.m. their time. This is such a clear and obvious lie from Stugotz.
All right, before we get to the Heat stuff that we may or may not get to, and, pretty important game they're playing, just yesterday, okay, because this stuff is happening all the time with Stugotz, and it is a legitimately maddening thing, okay? We've all been here with him, and it's infuriating. Just yesterday, I was saying to Mike Ryan, because he was late again, I'm like, look, man, we've got to nip this in the bud, because I'm telling you that Kornheiser, all these years later, sits there and steams because Wilbon's always late and always strolls in with a sandwich and a juice, and he's been doing it across 20 years, and Kornheiser's got 2 decades worth of resentment built up because Wilbon shows up on Wilbon time always. And I was just telling Mike, I am not living this life in my old age like Kornheiser with Stugot. Like, I'm not having this where we're in here at godforsaken hours and he's strolling in, always holding us up. And so what I want to ask you guys is, I think we should start the national show just asking him questions about this call. Just nonstop until the lie unravels, because there's just no way. Why can't he make calls on the car on the way over here? Like, what is he doing? He said all this stuff with his daughter was going to be over Tuesday.
I mean, and to pull back the curtain even further, we had a later call time today. Gave him some relief, and he's still just throwing it in our face and doing the least amount of work. No one believes you. No one. I'm talking like he's here. I'm getting mad. I'm getting mad.
Mike, does he think he has job security? Like, is he not paying attention?
It's a global pandemic. They just took an hour away from us. Work harder.
Like, I don't understand. Is he not paying? Does he think that I'm going to always, for the rest of his life, catch him in my substantive lap?
What's going on isn't good news. It's not more time for the links. It's like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and let's make ourselves the greatest sports radio podcast ever.
What would have to hypothetically happen in his career for him to, like, maybe I should start, pumping the gas here a little bit more and, maybe start working harder. Like, if this doesn't make him turn on, Chris, the Jets, what will?
Listen, Chris, I'm telling you, it is my greatest frustration around here. And it started with your father. I went to a bar in the Keys to meet your father because in the name of friendship, he has never lifted a finger. Everyone always has to come to wherever it is. No, I'm familiar with his work. Clearly, I'm part of fostering these environments. But I go to Cody and I'm like, man, we got a whole lot of entitlement in our group. And Cody's like, yep, everybody else but me. And if you go to Stugotz spends all his time during the breaks bitching about how everyone else around here is entitled.
Right.
How everyone else around here doesn't work hard enough. And you know what his biggest complaint is? They don't work hard enough producing me. Not me, Dan.
I had to turn my microphone off.
Him.
I had to turn my microphone off. I said an F word. I said it. I said
if you guys stopped giving Stugotz lines, he would fall to the earth like one of those inflatable men who is in front of a car dealership and you just take all the air out of it and he would just fall to the earth and it would just be some form of make or miss league, Dan, and then it would just peter out on the floor. We're being mean now. We've crossed the line, and now I'm the jerk. I'm the jerk again because he's not at work. Because he's
you took that too far, Dan.
Roy, how much do we owe you?
Fine.
I think. What's my copay on this one? Let's talk Heat, please, because must win for Milwaukee tonight. I think we can agree.
I'm convinced after the way that Raptors-Celtics game ended, everything is just going perfect for the Heat. Like, every scenario is going to play out perfect for the Heat. Like, that game, because if you're sitting there, right, everyone's like me, like, I want this series to go long. I don't want it to go up 3-0. I want them both to have to play a lot of tough games. How did they win that game? They only won that game because everything's going well for the Heat right now.
And he's getting a lot of attention nationally, which is good because, yeah, OG needs to make that shot. But the story is a pass from Kyle Lowry.
What a pass.
That is one of the greatest passes I've ever seen in any sport.
Over Bowl.
Yeah, well, no, not Bowl. Taco Fall.
Taco Fall, excuse me. That's the second time I've confused those guys.
Man.
Well,
what's going on there?
Like, technically food-related things.
No, so. They're both 7'5".
He just wants taco bowls all the time.
I love it, too. It's so good.
That is true. Over Taco Fall.
Poor Taco, right? I mean, he just gets called in there. That's his moment, and he blows it.
Oh, I felt bad for him, but I felt good for Kyle Lowry in that moment because Kyle Lowry, look, the Raptors have actually been in this bubble atmosphere longer than anybody. They traveled almost damn near a full month before this whole thing got started. And if you've seen the emotional videos of them finally seeing their family, it's really cute. Kyle Lowry's been outspoken and has shared videos on his social media platform, and he's been a real leader on social causes.
How great was that picture of Kyle Lowry like finding the camera to hug his teammate?
Oh, he looks so happy. That was amazing.
I actually, when I first moved into my house, I was having all sorts of trouble with my ESPN app, and the only thing that I could watch, like the only way that I could watch the playoffs on the ESPN app was from that sideline cam, that beautiful sideline cam that provided the best possible angle of that OG game-winning shot. And I just thought it was like, okay, this is Disney. It's the height of technology. This is a robotic cam that is moving quite fast and fluid. Paul George fell out of bounds last night in the game against the Nuggets, and in the frame you actually saw the camera. It's a guy in like a bucket that is on a track, and they move him, which is why he's able to actually follow the action, but it looks so fun because that thing is traveling so fast. He's just like in an office chair that's being pulled.
I saw a great shot, okay, and I know that Stugotz's only analysis of the playoffs has been, I don't think it feels like the playoffs, guys, which no one disagrees with, right? Like, there's
last night kind of felt like the playoffs.
Well, no, what I was going to say is the endings to these games end up feeling good, but I saw one camera angle where you could hear the noises that made it acoustically near silent in a moment that would never be silent if there were fans there. Like, you heard the ball arrive, the buzzer, the swish of the net. Like, you heard all of that stuff in a way that made that celebration, wonderful as it was, the end of the game, wonderful as it was, the total opposite of what it would have been if there had been fans there.
You're really seeing the height of the sport in terms of execution, because atmosphere, fans, sightlines, I think quantifiably we can say, given this sample inside the bubble, they matter. They take away from players actually being to execute, because you see guys in practice and you'll be blown away by like the mid-level player that can hit like 35 straight shots from a given spot. This is all just empty gym, best people in the world doing what they're supposed to do, and all that other nonsense that makes us feel good and gets us excited while we watch it on
makes
TV.
The play less good.
That makes it all good, makes the play less better, and now you're seeing the world-class athletes like absolutely executing at a top level.
Play less better is not the way to say that. Regardless, we will shift seamlessly from that to Chris Cody.
I feel like that Raptors shot though is like that Raptors shot is amazing though. I'm still like feeling all that. Like, I'm not in that moment when that shot goes in, I'm not like, oh man, there's no crowd there. Like, I was sitting on my couch and I just was like, I've had the same visceral reaction that I would have regardless. So I'm not feeling missing the fans as much as everybody else.
I'm sorry, Chris. That's not what I meant. I didn't mean to diminish the moment. I'm talking about seeing it from 20 different angles because I was that interested in the way that game ended. The idea that Kemba Walker's pass that gets that shot at the rim with 0.5 seconds left gets engulfed by the ending to that game because, as you said, Kyle Lowry, who says he's got balls of steel, even though none of us would say Kyle Lowry has balls of steel, we do not associate Kyle Lowry with postseason balls of steel. We associate him with balls of mush.
Up until like last year where he won a championship and had a couple good performances, him and DeMar DeRozan were the 1 and 2 in terms of like least efficient guards in postseason history. Their postseason track record, as far as their performances from the field, were the worst of all time.
Let me ask you guys this. If Taco Fall, all 7-5 of him. I like the people who pointed out that Taco Fall was -3 on the game yesterday. He was a -3 because the only time they used him is to come into the game and guard the inbounder.
Kyle Lowry was asked post-game like about that pass. He's like, you got a guy that's 7'12" out there.
No, it's ridiculous how tall he is. What is his actual height? What is the height of him and Bol? Because both of them are like 7'3", 7'4", 7'5". But my question is, if that guy can't guard the inbound, do we need to stop guarding the inbounder and just have 5 defenders run around covering 4 guys?
So Taco Fall actually has 3 inches on Bol when you Google it. 7'5" for Taco Fall, which is insane, and 7'2" at Bol. Bol, the more agile of the two.
So Taco Fall plays 2 seconds, or no, he plays 0.5 of a second in that game, and he is -3 for the game.
Do you guys do this thing with extremely tall people where you just always feel bad for them? Even when he's walking onto the court, Taco Fall is about to get his first playing time of the series, I assume. And I just have this, I just see him and I just feel bad. I don't know what I'm doing there.
No, what you're doing there is it looks like it hurts. You see these giants later in life and you just sort of, kind of feel for what might be headed towards them. Like even a person like Kevin Durant, who plays out on the perimeter, having these foot issues and micro fractures and all these things that plague taller people. It's just, I kind of feel for them because most people aren't built that way. The world isn't built for people who are built that way.
Chris, I think that what you're feeling there is a hugely common thing where you see. And this, we cover it in laughter a lot of times, right? We cover it, we rationalize it away by applauding the Taco Falls when they get in the game and by, sort of applauding the lovable personality of Boban, for example. But I think a lot of people, when you see those people, what comes over you is a little bit of sadness because man, it must be difficult like that. It must be painful, physically painful. It must be hard to find a bed or take a shower or go on an airplane.
Just think about where they are right now, because it's one thing if you're traveling is terrible, but Walt Disney World Resort isn't made for a guest that's 7'5". They're not. I'm sure he's ducking when he's showering.
Oh, but I'm guessing, though, that I'm guessing, Mike, given that they spent $150 million on the bubble, I'm guessing that they've made some alterations to the accommodation.
Oh, for sure. I saw photos of larger beds being shipped, but like Hassan Whiteside, he had to stay at the yacht club, and that is in one of the higher-end resorts that some of the playoff teams were. So while they make the accommodations with the beds, the ceilings are the ceilings, right? There's going to be an end of the rotation guy that's 7'3" that's going to get, a King James suite.
But which is the one that it hits you on most? Because
Taco, I saw a video which was heartwarming of his teammates. I think it was Enes Kanter and Jaylen Brown teaching him how to swim, and even swimming's not that fun. 2 strokes and you're at the other end of the pool.
I think though that when most people look at the giants of the giants, that it's secondary to think of, man, life must be hard just getting around. I think the first thing that creates a sadness in you is the idea that they're walking toward terrible pain. They are walking. Andre the Giant at the end of his life was probably drinking like that to self-medicate because every step was enormous pain. And I don't think you ever get numb to wandering around with enormous pain.
That, and I've also seen My Giant. You guys remember that movie? I think that movie honestly is what affected me looking at all tall people after that.
George Mirasan,
Mirasan and Billy Crystal,
who I believe
that movie sticks with me.
I believe Jorge Mirasan owns the record for most appearances in This Is SportsCenter commercials.
Help me with this. Is Murasan the first of these kinds of people that we're talking about? Because
probably Minute.
Wilt Chamberlain was a star, and people envied his life because they thought of him being at the height of being a physical specimen. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, we've talked about this. Like Kevin Durant used to pray as a young person because he didn't want to be tall, because he didn't want to stand out that way. But in terms of the freaks, you think, Manute Bol is probably first before Murasan, right?
Yeah, I just there's a stat that left-handed people are more likely to die than a right-handed person because the world was primarily designed by right-handed people, so you have a slightly increased risk. The world is designed for people that are at most, like 6'6", right? So there are so many things. The late Fab Mello, I remember, he got a concussion because he just walked inside of a room. His head hit a door frame. I would love to talk to Taco Fall and just ask him how many times stuff like that happens, things that we take for granted.
Chris, can you tell me, Tyler Hero, what is his listed height? Because I don't know if he's going to physically grow some more because
he already looks kind of different.
He's so young. Well, this is the thing, right? I feel like with professional training, he's going to end up filling out. And I know Kentucky feels like a professional program, but he's going to enter these years where he is physically going to get bigger. But I just always marvel. I don't know who the greatest example of this is. Steve Kerr being my height as a guy who was always like a pesky little rabbit on the court, but he's 6'4". How tall is Tyler Hero listed, Chris?
6'5".
6'5". Is he done growing? Because 6'5".
I don't know, Dan.
I'm guessing. I just don't know. When does growth stop? 19 years old, 18 years old.
I mean, Paul George famously, I think, grew 2 inches after he was drafted. So it can happen, but I don't know if he's done. I'll ask him.
My point is that the quick
Heat,
the quick little guy, Tyler Hero, the guy who seems quick and little, is larger than almost all people you run into on a daily basis. Like, you're not running into a whole lot of 6'5" people, and he's the guy out there who's running between, Taco Fall's legs, which is something that actually happened during the preseason. Somebody actually dribbled the ball through Taco Fall's legs.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I thought Tyler Hero was 6'2", to your point. Like, that's what I would have guessed. Like, it's so crazy that these guys, these guards, they're taller than you think.
Kyle Lowry is listed at 6 feet. So he's one of the shorter, great basketball players in the league. For him to launch that pass across the court over someone that he called 7'12", that is actually 7'5".
Where's
John Brinkus?
It was incredible. It was one of the best, like Mahomes-like pass.
With 0.5 of a second left, with that being the play design.
He said it was his third option. That was not his play design. He said that he was down to his third option. The third option, in microseconds we're talking about, was to throw it over someone. God knows how long that is on the inbound. So at the very beginning, you have to put it at basically like a 10-foot trajectory over the top and have it dip perfectly. It's just unbelievable considering the circumstances.
Jaylen Brown's attempted block, it's the highest I've ever seen anybody jump in my life, and he couldn't get it.
Chris, can you say, when you were talking earlier and you were saying everything is breaking the Heat's way, I think I have this right. You guys tell me if I've got this wrong. I feel like you don't want Boston. You'd prefer to not play Boston, that Toronto makes you feel a little more comfortable because of all the matchup stuff that you're seeing play out in the Milwaukee series. Boston seems like a very difficult matchup for the Miami Heat. So is that what you're talking about when you say things breaking their way, or you just want a long series over there? Because Toronto has not looked very good in this series, and beyond looking very good in the series, what you've seen on display is Toronto misses Kawhi Leonard. Of course, you're going to miss the guy who can get all his own stuff at the end.
You're seeing a mismatch right now, which is what you're seeing in the Heat-Bucks series, because Toronto, inside the bubble, has only lost to one team. This is the Boston Celtics. That was their first win against the Boston Celtics within that bubble. They're running over everybody else, but you're watching that series, and you're like, I kind of want the team that hasn't lost to anybody else in Toronto just because I have the sample of the season, because we match up better than them against Brad Stevens' Boston, who's always been a difficult matchup for the Heat.
Yeah, I think you want that series to be long regardless, but to your point, and then if I can get it to be a long series and handpick my team, I'm taking the Raptors. So that result last night, I think, was great for the Heat. It makes the series longer, and it keeps the Raptors in it.
Do you expect to lose tonight, or do Heat fans go into every game saying, hey, maybe I think a Heat in 5, Heat in 6, but if you ask me each night, I'm going to say I think the Heat is going to win that night? Because if you believe Heat in 5, Heat in 6, Heat in 7, they're losing tonight. Like, tonight is the night that they're supposed to lose, but you haven't seen a whole lot in this series that would make you think that they don't match up well with Milwaukee, because the MVP doesn't look like the MVP, and that's because Miami's doing that.
I haven't even seen the Heat play as well as they're capable of on the offensive end. I haven't seen Eric Spoelstra really go that much. Now, granted, I'm not a head coach, so I don't know the intricacies of what I'm seeing right now, but it doesn't seem as though he is emptying the bag when it comes to tactics. I'm trying to figure out exactly how Milwaukee gets back into this, considering Miami's already beaten them at their own game. There was reports that Budenholzer was poring over film, and immediately following the game, the entire team collectively went out after the Game 2 loss to dinner to talk about what had happened. So, I don't know, but Mike Budenholzer has never made an adjustment in his postseason life.
At Shell, we know from the time you get up to the time you wrap up,
good night,
there's a lot of meetups, eat-ups, and hurry-ups. So come to Shell and get 3 things done at once. Fill up with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus to help keep your engine running like new. Save up with the Fuel Rewards program and never pay full price for gas again. And snack up with in-store rewards to save even more at the pump. Make the most of the stop you need to make with Shell and engines that continuously use Shell V-Power Nitro Plus premium gasoline. See full terms and conditions at fuelrewards.com.
Did you know Geico's now offering an extra 15% credit on car and motorcycle policies? That's 15% on top of what Geico could already save you. So what are you waiting for? Your teenager to help around the house?
Okay, Mom, I emptied the dishwasher, vacuumed the basement, and folded the sheets out of the dryer.
Wait, what?
Oh, and next, I'm going to clean Mitten's litter box.
Are we in some kind of prank show or something? That's a camera, isn't it?
There's never been a better time to switch to Geico. Save an extra 15% when you switch by October 7th. Limitations apply. Visit geico.com for details.
I do not know. I do not know what it is that they have to do in order to get Antetokounmpo to be better. It seems obvious to me that the thing that needs to change for Milwaukee is Antetokounmpo needs to be better. But how do you make him better? How do you make him better by design? How do you help him get more shots, be more dominant? The thing that he does that no one else, I know you guys love the Bam dunks and everything, but he just gets you such easy baskets by virtue of just spinning and dunking, because you can't do anything about it. He'll just get the easiest 2 points that can be gotten in the league because of how he moves around, and they're not doing that or getting that as much as they have the entire last couple of seasons.
I mean, I don't think anyone's coming to Chris for X's and O's talk, but I heard a meme saying that when they get him in the pick and roll, that's how you get him out of being like double and triple teamed. So maybe that's an adjustment.
But his greatest strength, though, is coming flying down the court and just caving you in. I understand that that's
not against the Heat, though. Not against the Heat, because they just stand there and they're just like, not here.
I understand. I guess what I'm asking you guys is, yes, you can make adjustments in the half court, but the half court is not the play. The reason people question the Bucks and him in the postseason is because the whole game goes into the half court, and that's not their strength, and it's not his strength.
Dan, the one thing is you can look at the action of having a pick and roll with a guard, right? Like switching on where Giannis is all of a sudden faced with somebody like Tyler Hero, somebody like Goran Dragic, is something that he can go around and then have that play where he dunks from the free throw line, just extending his arm. And I don't even know how many times this series I've seen that happen where he's, back to the basket. All of a sudden he turns around and dunks. And I was like, how did that happen? Like, how did he put his arm that far?
But those are the most annoying. I hate those. Those
I told you those were going to
even jump.
I told you that it was going to be frustrating when he does that Inspector Gadget stuff that you're like, wait a minute. There are 9 human beings on the court and there's a cartoon character.
But Miami has the defenders that actually, what's different about Miami in reading breakdowns, this is not my own take. Miami has defenders like Jay Crowder, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Andre Iguodala, and we'll see what the status is of Iguodala that looked like a bad sprain. Where Miami differs from most teams in guarding Giannis in that pick and roll is when that pick and roll happens, players switch off. And they're hoping to get that mismatch and exploit that weakness. Miami fights through the screens. So what you're talking about is just simple execution. Miami is better at fighting through the screens than Milwaukee is at setting them. So Milwaukee needs to improve at setting them and letting that happen for Giannis. And sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. Sometimes you get out executed.
Did you guys feel the same thing that I did in game 2, where you pretty obviously see through 2 games, and I'm going to end up being wrong on Bam Adebayo getting into foul trouble because I did not know that this is how the Heat were going to play him, where they were just going to send waves of hugely athletic guys. But I'm curious.
I mean, he did foul out the last game. But it wasn't really Giannis doing the damage. So that takes out there, but Bam, historically throughout the season, Giannis only drew 1 foul on Bam.
And he's not guarding him that much. He's only guarding him when he goes to center. But what I wanted to ask you guys is if you noticed, right, because this doesn't happen that often in basketball, where you can physically notice as it's happening what it is that you're watching. So when Jay Crowder is covering him, you're like, Jay Crowder's got the size, the athleticism, the thickness to bother him a little bit, just sort of get in his way. Jimmy Butler, what a lot of people don't know about James Harden is the reason that he's that good is because he's impossibly strong. He's physically unbelievably strong, and Jimmy Butler's strong. And so while you're not going to be as strong or as big as Antetokounmpo, you're okay when it's Jimmy Butler as well. But then Iguodala's doing it, and you're hoping for strips because Iguodala's smaller. And then Derek Jones, he farts Derek Jones. Like, Derek Jones is so skinny out there that you're watching, and you're like, no, this is not going to work with Derek Jones guarding him because he's going to get stuck in Giannis's ass crack.
Yeah, and it wasn't at the start, but then Derek Jones did well. Like he acquitted himself because
but think about it, it's the dunk champion. Yeah. Like, it's a hugely athletic human being that I'm sitting there watching, and I'm like, you're gonna get stuck in Giannis's ass crack.
That was a funny thing with Derek Jones where he came on the court and he looked terrible. And I'm like, get him off the court. And then 2 minutes later, he was like playing great.
That's why you stick with your guy. That's why you stick with your blocks. That's why you stick with your guy.
But did you guys not? Okay, so it didn't happen to you guys where you're like, man, the size differences here are problematic. Derek Jones isn't going to be able to keep him from doing the Inspector Gadget stuff, even though he's the dunk champion.
Yeah. But then you realize, Derek Jones himself is one of the most athletic people on the planet. Maybe give him a second and he can figure out how to use some of that athleticism to his advantage.
Where's Stugotz?
Geico knows there are many reasons why you ride. From the thrill of the revving engine and pure adrenaline of flying down the highway, to the confidence of knowing that Geico always has your back with 24/7 access to claim service. But Ari Snyder has one reason in particular.
I have extremely large upper arms. They won't even fit into most shirts. Thankfully, biking really embraces vest culture, so I feel accepted.
Geico Motorcycle. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. Motorcycle. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.